So, welcome to Fusing the Unfusable. We have a special guest today, Jovana. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Jovana has a very interesting profile. Jovana is co-founder and CEO of Omla. She has about 15 years of experience in marketing, and she's also worked for TikTok, which quite amazing, and Amazon, Pepsi. And Jovana is a graduate of the Harvard Business School Disruption Innovation Program, and having worked under Clayton Christensen, who's one of the most prominent business and innovation thinkers. And she's also an early stage investor in a number of crypto and Web3 gaming projects. Jovana, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you here. Let's talk about fintech. You were recently at Seamless. You were a speaker at Seamless. I was there. I was amazed to see how big fintech has become, how big a seat at the table they have right now. And it feels like it happened almost suddenly here. What do you think it's going to take for Web3 to carve out that space at the table? What do you think it's going to take, in your opinion?
We're almost somewhere in the middle. So I want to say we kind of speak to both sides of this equation, right? So I think one thing that fintech does right is that it really fills a lot of gaps that people have. I think I come from primarily a communications and marketing and branding, and really finding how brands fill spaces or find a way to create a space in people's lives. Otherwise, people are living their lives perfectly well without your product, right? So I think fintechs in general are really good at solving problems that people have in the real world. And I think in the Web3 world, we're still identifying what those problems really are, rather than maybe identifying and solving issues that maybe already exist. So I think it's about ease of access. And I think it's about creating things that really add value to people today, not maybe value for people 10 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard, right? I think, what was it? Henry Ford said, he said, if I did what people wanted, I would have just given them faster horses, right? So it's hard when people have technology or have something, and then you ask them, what would you like? It takes, I think, visionaries and innovators to come up with problems, to come up with solutions for problems that people don't think exist yet.
I don't think those two things are different, right? I think it's about finding the source of that problem rather than trying to create the problem. And I think that's so Henry Ford was solving a real issue that people were, they were getting around on horses, bicycles, whatever the case is. So that problem was already there. I don't think it was about asking people, but I think what we're largely doing, and I don't think that's the case for everybody in the Web3 world, but I think what people are largely doing is not thinking enough about their end user and really thinking, what does my end user do in a day? What challenges do they have? I don't think they really plot out their customer journey. If I can go back to the communications world, right, and say, right, they have a problem at this particular stage, I think it's like, well, maybe they have a problem here or they have a problem there, but if you really want mass adoption of anything, you have to find a way of integrating into people's lives seamlessly, and the way that where they wake up in the morning and where do they go back to sleep, what does their entire journey look like? And I think we're not customer obsessed. I think we're tech obsessed in the Web3 world, and we're obsessed with products and how we make them and making them more complex, rather than thinking, how do I solve a problem for my customer?
Luckily, the teams that make up these companies, I mean, we've been blessed to have people like Steve Jobs that thought about the user, right? And thought about the customer, not just the technologists that are just building systems and making them run faster or quicker. And that whole design thinking, customer centricity has become, I think, quite prevalent right now in the industry. So we do look at that. And I think one thing that some companies still don't do, where there's room to improve, is the internal customer experience, which means their employees, how they work. We often deal with companies, or even are part of companies, that are very high tech, but then you look on the inside and you see it's really low tech. It's not platforms, it's Excels and things like that. So I think that aspect is something that I'm very passionate about, which is, how do you design with the customer in mind? My family runs a school, and like a children's school, and we call it child-centric education, really thinking about the child at the center of everything, and how to design systems that work for them, rather than just trying to forge them into what we think the school curriculum should be, or and then thinking about what the future holds. So I love that expression. It says, let's skate to where the puck is going to be in hockey terms, or run to where the football is going to be, right, in football terms. We have to look ahead to the future and start to think about what's coming next. And, it's a super exciting time. I mean, we were just talking earlier before coming here about ChatGPT, right? And how, older people that have never imagined, like somebody like my mother would be using ChatGPT, but today she was having conversation with ChatGPT-O, and so it's incredible. So, back to our work, right? Our work is about helping companies with technology. Would you say that's an accurate statement about what you've done, or even, I mean, in marketing, right? You were still working with technology.
Yeah, and I think, I've worked with a lot of mass market brands, and I think particularly with Omla, I think if I compare our approach, I think we are just so customer obsessed. We started with the customer, we didn't start with the technology. And I think we looked at what is the broken technology part of the Web3 ecosystem and said, look, we need to fix that. And for me, that was a lot about user experience, user communication, brand. And actually, I think branding goes back to what you were saying previously about, internal versus external. And I think what people don't spend a lot of time, especially early on, is defining what their brand is. And I think a lot of people get what branding is actually wrong. They think about a brand as colors and a logo and a font. And a brand for me is really an entire architecture of your company. It's what do you stand for? How do you speak internally, externally? How do you do things? And I think it's very often overlooked in early stage startups because they prioritize other things, not really considering that it impacts really all factors of the business. So I think it is about, again, going back to being, I don't want to call it customer-centric. It's about being people-centric, and it's about being,
I love that,
empathetic to the needs of what your customers have, or your employees have, or whoever is within your circle. And I think ChatGPT is actually a really great example, I think, of a product that is highly technologically advanced, but also solves real world problems and real world challenges, whether it be for finding information, whether it be for, having some sort of social interaction. Whether that social interaction is real or not is questionable. But I think they had a product that was technologically advanced, but also, again, fit into the consumer journey, if I can call it that, of everyday people.
I love what you were saying earlier about people and how companies operate, and for me it's about culture, right? The culture that each leader, each company creates for their team. And it can be so cliche, right? We have a good culture, we have a positive culture, and culture is really the way companies operate. And I think it's so impactful. And I'm involved in a project where culture is really important, and we describe the friendliness, the attention to people, and as being really important, an important part of our culture. And I think that attention should extend, obviously, I think naturally to customers, right? It's actually the reverse. If you extend that attention to customers' feelings and emotions and how they feel about a product, you would want that same culture to be internal as well. So, for me, it's a super topic. I love it. I could talk about it. And some of the projects I've worked on where somebody said, "Can you do culture?" or "Can you design for me a culture?" And I had to, sit back and think. It's like, okay, what do you do? You're a ministry, or you're a company. What is your product? What is the culture? Isn't it being able to explain to everybody in the company how they fit in, to delivering the strategy?
I love that you've said the word strategy, actually, because when you started talking about culture, it actually took me back to one of the lectures that I had at Harvard Business School, and I'll never forget it because Professor Clayton Christensen said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And culture is not just something that is top down. I mean, it's very much a two-way street. It's top down and it's bottoms up. So, yeah, somebody can try and design a culture, but cultural design is, I think, by definition, something that, you know, it almost sounds schizophrenic. It's like two different ends of the spectrum. It's like culture and design. Culture is not something that you really design. It's something that is shared value and that is created.
There's so many meanings to it, right? We could call a culture, you know, I'm multicultural, right? So I come from various roots, and some people mistake that. We're really talking about how we operate, right? How we treat people, how we behave, how we deliver. Because when we work, we're delivering something. We're interacting, you know, there's an aim, there's an objective, and how does that company work? And I've designed interview questions to test if somebody would be a positive addition to the culture, right? Rather than be a negative addition to the culture. And then we can get into the topics of KPIs and OKRs. And some people deliver KPIs, but with such a toxic culture, right, that they create so much negativity around them that it affects everybody else. And they deliver their KPIs, but what about the overall strategy? What about the strategic alignment of all the departments, of all the teams delivering something? And this is something that fascinates me. Now, you know, you've been in the region
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
8 years, and you have about 15 years of experience. But 8 years is a long time. I mean, things move fast here, right? I'm sure you've seen a lot. What would you say, you know, in the region here we do well? What do you think we can do better? And what do you think is missing?
What do we do well? I think going back to your point of culture, I think we do multicultural actually really well. You know, there's, I think, 180 different nationalities in the UAE. And I think everybody is living harmoniously together, and it works, right? It's a system that works. What do we not do well? I think, you know, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. I if we were somewhere else, I would probably say taxes. I'll probably have to think about that one a bit. What do you think?
What we don't do well here?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe we move too fast. We do too much. We try to do too much. Maybe we should slow things down and just we're running at a high speed here compared to other countries, and it's part of the success of this region. And we kind of get addicted to it, and then I guess we have to travel and go and meditate somewhere and relax. But tell us about the product. Tell us about the Omla.
Omla. Well, I think
Omla in Arabic means currency.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it does. And again, going back to being customer-centric and culture-centric, and I think having been in the region, although I've been based in Dubai primarily, I've worked across the whole region really, and really understood the extremely nuanced, I think, tropes of every single, even within a country, right? There are certain nuances, and I think if there's one thing that we really wanted to get right with Omla, it is being so hyper relevant to these different nuances. So I think even in the way that we communicate with customers, it is in the language, and it's not a formal language, right? It's the voice of the people, really, and making sure that we communicate what Bitcoin and cryptocurrency really is in a way that's easy for people to understand and digest. So I think going back to the product is a easy to use, beautiful UI, easy way to save or invest or whichever way you really want to look at it, into initially just Bitcoin and then a basket of currencies on a weekly subscription basis, essentially. So you don't really have to go and time the market and read charts. And it goes back to what I said earlier about, you know, fitting into the way that your customers live their lives, right? Because I think we understand that fundamentally most people don't want to go and spend 100 hours watching videos about how to trade or how to read charts, etc. So we've given them an easy to use method of getting a bit of crypto and really keeping it for a long time.
I love it. It reminds me of one of my favorite books called The Richest Man in Babylon. I don't know if you've read it, but it's really about the wisdom of saving. And this idea of, not timing the market, just dollar cost averaging, just buying, and those kind of disciplines. And I think the region is kind of attuned to it. It is the Eastern, let's say the Eastern cultures are used to saving, and the Arabs as well. So I think it sounds like this is really good. It's going to be a good fit for this market, and I'm excited to see what it's going to lead to. Any other thoughts about some of the challenges or things that you're facing right now, in let's say in progressing to where you want to be? How far are you from? Are you live? What stage are you with Omla?
So we are currently finalizing our product development. So we'll be going live with beta shortly, in the next couple of weeks. Although we've actually run a lot of focus groups, and I had a conversation with someone who is a investor in the industry, and I said, we ran a couple of focus groups. He said, I've been investing in this industry probably for the last 5 years. This is the first time I've ever heard someone use the word focus group. So I think right now we're just making sure that the product is really super solid for mass market adoption, and making sure that language, tonality, and everything else fits the audience that we're after.
It sounds amazing. It sounds something like my parents would be able to understand and consume and benefit from.
That's the idea.
Amazing. Any other final thoughts? I mean, we were, are you planning on using AI somewhere in your tech stack, or is that something that you're looking at?
AI, I think, comes into so many different parts of what we do. I mean, there's AI in the KYC process and making sure that it is more secure. There's AI in managing data and making sure that the vast volume of customers that we are going to have are served right message, right time, etc. And then obviously on the tech side as well. So I would say we're not an AI company, although I think like every company is an internet company these days. It's inevitable that every company will be an AI company as well in some shape or form.
True. I think there's a lot of excitement around AI. We've just heard that there's a fund announced in the IFC, that there's money that's going to be allocated to that. And I think it's important to highlight that, what we do, how we use AI. Of course, there have been a lot of talks about how not to misuse AI, but focusing on the positive, I think we're going to see a lot of AI happening, a lot of investments happening, and affecting people's lives. And I shared with you a story about my mother using ChatGPT today for the first time because she was able to converse with it, and this is an exciting moment. This is an exciting moment. I'm really looking forward to see Omla go live, and I wish you the best success, and hope to have you on soon to talk about that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Great speaking to you.
Thanks.